My name's Claire.
And my name's Kaylee, and we'll be doing our presentation on invertebrate diversity and adaptations.
Alright, so a little introduction to invertebrates. They occupy the most recognizable and abundant animal group on Earth. They represent about 95% of documented species. In the US alone, there are 14,000 species, of which 200 are endangered. Invertebrates have several advantages, traits that contribute to their dominant presence on Earth, including the presence of chitin in the exoskeleton, flight in many insects, hemolymph content, and more. For example, invertebrates with open circulatory systems have a fluid analogous to blood called hemolymph that can help them evade predation by voluntarily trigger auto-hemorrhaging. A study in the Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Biomedicine has also confirmed that hemolymph in many marine species has antimicrobial properties to make up for the absence of definitive immune system, which also contributes to their success. So they are highly fit, difficult to catch, hard to hurt, and resistant to germs.
The peripheral phylum, informally known as sponges, are also the basal taxon of all animal species. They are sessile aquatic organisms that get nutrients by a process known as filter feeding. This process is done by drawing water in through its pores into the spongiole, where food particles are suspended within them, and as the water flows out of the osculum. The canocytes assist in creating the water current with their flagella and ingest the food. The amoebocytes then digest the food particles and maintain the sponge's structure. They lack true tissues and organs and contain mesophyll, which is the gelatinous layer in between the canocytes and the amoebocytes. Sponges reproduce through sequential hermaphroditism. So one sponge will first function as one sex and then the other.
The Cnidaria is one of the oldest groups in the clade. They have true tissues. The cnidarians can be sessile or motile. They have a radial body plan, which is diploblastic, and carnivores that capture prey using their tentacles. The phylum includes 9,000 different species. It is made up of hydrozoans, scyphozoa, anthozoa, and cubozoa. They lack cephalization as well as organs. When it comes to reproduction, they are capable of sexual reproduction, but most of them use asexual reproduction. In this process, the tissues are budded off from the parent, or the parent divides into smaller individuals. The lack of cephalization keeps them from being as mobile.
Flatworms are bilaterally symmetrical, soft-bodied invertebrates with several muscle layers. However, their bodies are not segmented. Flatworms make up the largest phylum of acoelomates and are sorted into 4 classes: the Tetramoda, or flukes, the Cestoda, tapeworms, the Monogenia, and the Turbellaria. They do not have body cavities, but have a head and a ganglion, as well as a protonephria, also called flame cells, that function similarly to the kidney in humans to excrete waste materials. Another important structure is the skin, which replaces the circulatory system because flatworms do not need to transport oxygen throughout their body. Instead, they simply diffuse oxygen via the skin. Flatworms can be found in an abundance of environments, including fresh or marine water and damp terrestrial environments. Flatworms are hermaphrodites and engage in both sexual and asexual reproduction via fragmentation and budding, and which type of reproduction is dominant depends on the type of flatworm. The rotifera phylum have rotifers, tiny animals that are seen in pond water, the ocean, or damp soil. These animals are multicellular and have specialized organ systems, yet are smaller than most protists. Rotifers are able to reproduce via parthenogenesis, where females can reproduce without a male fertilizing the eggs. Because of this, some species can have no males at all. Rotifers have a digestive tube, otherwise known as an alimentary canal, with a separate mouth and anus. These structures lie in the pseudosolium, which is fluid-filled. The mouth has a crown of cilia around it to aid in the capture of food.
The Invertebrates can be ectoprocta or brachiopoda. They are coelomates that feed by ciliated tentacles, and they have a body cavity fully lined by mesoderm. The Invertebrates have the cilia, which creates water currents and moves food particles towards the mouth. They are also bilaterian, which means they have bilateral symmetry and have diploblastic development. The ectoprocs resemble clumps of moss, and they live in the sea and are sessile. Brachiopoda, on the other hand, are lamp shells that are similar to clams, and they are what are shown in the picture. They look like fossils, and they have been found from 400 million years ago, and they are remnants of 30,000 different species from the Paleozoic and the Mesozoic era. The ectoprocta can be called moss animals, and most of them are hermaphrodites, and they usually cross-fertilize. And that's a picture of the ectoprocta, which are called moss animals also. The phylum Annelida, there are about 16,500 species. The Annelida are generally divided into three groups. The Polychaeta, which is the most comprised of marine bristleworms, Oligochaeta, which include earthworms and other segmented worms, and Hierodenia, which are leeches. Annelids are coelomates that have segmented bodies and organs. The digestive tract is not segmented, but other organs are segmented. Their two defining traits are segmentism and presence or chaetae. Most annelids are segmented worms that are adapted to live in soil, which is why they have streamlined bodies to help them easily move through narrow, burrow-like environments. Their circular muscles and segments are an adaptation that helps them move. And this is the different ones. There's the bristleworm, earthworm, and leech. This shows the common examples of annelid diversity. Some are prettier than others, but pretty usually means deadly. For example, the photo on the left shows the common marine annelid, the bristleworm. Bristleworms have chaetae or bristles, projecting from the parapodia that can penetrate cuticles and cause a burning or stinging sensation. The middle picture shows a terrestrial earthworm, and leeches are shown on the right, which dwell in both land and salt or fresh water. Although most leeches prefer shallow freshwater. In Lab 7, the class performed an earthworm dissection to see internal anatomy of some Lophotrochozoa. The parts and organs that were identified were important to the earthworm's functioning. The skin covers the body and couples with a closed circulatory system to simulate a respiratory system. There are 5 arches or hears located between the gut and a simple brain with a ventral nerve cord. Starting at the mouth, ingested soil moves to the pharynx. Earthworms actually push their pharynx out to grab food and then recoil it. Food then moves into the esophagus, crop, and gizzard, where it is crushed down and then transported to the intestines. The intestines are found along 70% of the earthworm's body. There are nephridia in each segment that collect waste after digestion to exit the body through the anus. The earthworms are hermaphrodites, but another earthworm will fertilize the scutellum where the eggs are produced. Sperm moves from the seminal vesicles of one earthworm to the seminal vesicles of another, where it is stored through a mucus band, while a mucus band forms in the scutellum. The mucus band will then shift position to dislodge the eggs from the oviduct and fertilize the eggs internally. This becomes a cocoon shed by the earthworm, and now there is a baby earthworm.
Echinoderms are marine animals that are either sessile or slow-moving. Sea stars have an endoskeleton made of hard calcareous plates and a thin epidermis to go over it. These 5-part radial symmetrical animals have a water vascular system that uses hydraulics pushing through their feet tube as a means of movement and attaining food. The echinoderms, or sea stars, reproduce sexually and create larvae that are bilaterally symmetrical. Although the appearance is that they are radially symmetrical, they are not truly radial because of the opening of their water vascular system that is not centralized within their bodies. The echinidae, or sea urchins, and sand dollars lack arms but still have the 5 rows of tube feet radiating from the center. These animals are armed with spines that assist in movement and protection. They are able to feed on seaweed by using their jaw-like structure, which is located underneath them. The Holothuridae, or sea cucumbers, completely lack spines and have a reduced endoskeleton. These also have 5 rows of tube feet, in which some of them have even developed into feeding tentacles. These creatures are slippery to the touch and very squishy.
Alright, next is the nematoda, the roundworms. The nematode's body is covered by a cuticle, which is their form of exoskeleton. They are also a part of the ectozoan clade. They are found in most aquatic regions in soil, most moist tissues of plants, and body fluids/tissues of animals. They can be found in the bottom of lakes and oceans in decomposing organic matter as well. Their cylindrical shape can range from 1 millimeter to more than 1 meter. They lack a circulatory system, and the nutrients are distributed through their body through fluid in the pseudocoelom. As the nematode grows, it sheds its cuticle and creates a larger one. This species are free-living parasites to plants or animals, and species include hookworms and pinworms and can be hosted by humans. The females can reproduce in the human intestines, and the juveniles turn into sexually mature adults in the intestines. There's a total of 50 different species of nematodes that can be found in humans. We get them through eating a variety of different raw or uncooked meats.
The 3 main lineages of arthropods are the pancrustaceans, chelocerats, and the myriapods. Some of the more well-known arthropods are lobsters, spiders, ants, centipedes, and millipedes. Arthropods come in all shapes and forms and live in most habitats. They have bilateral symmetry and can be small, large, motile, or sessile, and are recognized by the presence of exoskeletons, segmented bodies with a body cavity, and modified appendages that aid in movement, sexual reproduction, feeding, and other means of survival. Eyes with receptors and antennae also aid survival, as well as specialized organs for gas exchange internally, and the cuticle encasing made of chitin and calcium carbonate externally. The cuticle, or exoskeleton, is molted in ecdysis throughout development. Depicted on the left are barnacles on a seashell to exemplify sessile arthropods. The photograph on the right charts the typical anatomy of a motile arthropod as demonstrated by the honeybee. Arthropods have bilateral symmetry and can be small, large, motile, or sessile, and are recognized by the presence of exoskeletons, segmented bodies with a body cavity, and modified appendages that aid in movement, sexual reproduction, feeding, and other means of survival. Eyes with receptors and antennae also aid survival, as well as specialized organs for gas exchange internally, and the cuticle encasing made of chitin and calcium carbonate externally. For those that have a cuticle or exoskeleton, it is molted in ecdysis throughout development. The phylum Chordata contains two basal groups, consisting of invertebrates and all vertebrates. They are bilaterally symmetrical colomates and usually have segmented bodies. Different types of chordates include lancelets, tunicates, and vertebrates, all which go into more detail in Chapter 34. The phylum reproduces sexually and asexually.
Overall, the invertebrates are split up into 11 main phyla. The animals are classified as an invertebrate based off their lack of vertebral column. They range from tiny animals that you can barely see to large animals like squid, and they are extremely diverse and live in a wide variety of habitats all around the world. And here are our references.